Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
This is your host, Alicia Debrell from Insight Media. Today's guest is Ed Erickson. He helps business owners transform their company into sustainably growing businesses that can scale as much as desired and can operate smoothly without the direct involvement of the owner. Ed has built 3 businesses from nothing to over $5 million in sales and uses that expertise to help small business owners get on their own path to success. His no-nonsense practical guidance has helped clients increase sales, improve operational consistency, create effective lead generation and sales processes, while significantly strengthening staff engagement. So, without further ado, I want to welcome Ed Erickson to the show. Hi, Ed. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Alicia. Glad to be here.
Well, I'm the type of girl who likes to jump right into it. So, tell me a little bit about yourself and your business experience.
Sure. Well, I've been a marketing and market research consultant for over 20 years. I've worked with a bunch of boutique consulting firms until I got the entrepreneurial bug one day and decided to go off on my own. So I opened a consulting firm back in 2006, working with mostly big companies, and that's been going and building and still out there. And for the last 4 or 5 years or so, I've been coaching small business owners to improve their results and get some control over their lives. Now, like I said, back in 2006, right, I started this firm. It was my first business. I'd been doing that work for years, and I just knew at that point I was better off on my own than working for somebody else. So I opened the doors, got some clients, put my head down, got to work. Then I got some more clients, put my head down, work some more, and I even hired some people to put their heads down and get to work. And I was on my way to working constantly, being irritable, getting burnt out, and really running as fast as I could to stand still. Now, in reality, looking back, I didn't have a business, right? I had a group of people that were getting some stuff done. So I started to think, man, there had to be a better way to do this. So I dove into reading and researching and talking to all kinds of business owners. And really that led me to 2 really critical insights. First, I learned that what the business sells is not the product. The business is the product. And for it to thrive, right, that business has to get deliberately designed from the ground up. And second, there's a specific path in the life of a business. And if you try to skip ahead, everything falls apart. And it turns out nearly everyone, and including me, tries to skip the critical first step. And the result really was as predictable as disheartening, right? All kinds of problems. So after thinking about this and reading about it, studying and all that, and I started putting these ideas to the test with business owners. I worked with them one-on-one, and we created this foundation and we designed the business for them, and really worked on changing their mindset to the business is the product. And it worked. Like I said, my clients have seen results, more sales, happier employees, and less drama around getting the work done. And it's really helped those owners get out of feeling overwhelmed and stressed. So now they can really see, and they're traveling along this clear path to that, idea of freedom that everybody who starts a business is daydreaming about when they first start.
Okay, makes sense. So tell me this, who is your ideal client?
My really ideal client is the owner of a service-based business who's got at least a couple of employees and usually annual revenue anywhere from a few $100,000 a year at the low end up to a few million. That said, I've worked with solopreneurs and bigger companies, but the people that really get the benefit from what I do is that group of owners with the few employees and like I said, a few $100,000 up to a few million. But almost more important than sort of those demographic type things, and the ideal client really is the owner that just knows there's got to be a better way to get things done, but they either don't know what to do or they just can't seem to get the result they're looking for, and they are ready to do something different.
So you help owners that are suffering from what you call burnout. First of all, what is burnout? I mean, I have an idea of what it is, but what is your take on burnout, and how do you help them with that?
And so when I talk about burnout, what I really see is people that are coming to me and they're working long hours and they're not getting the result that they want or think they should be getting, right? Either they're not making as much money as they want, they're not accomplishing the things they think they could or should be accomplishing. And they just generally feel like they're spinning their wheels and they're working really hard doing it. And they're just getting tired. They're getting frustrated. I've had more than one business owner that I've talked to has really come to me in the place where they were seriously considering just shutting the business down and going and getting a job somewhere, because they feel like all of this work and effort and energy that they're putting into it and they're not getting anywhere. So they figure, well, sure, I'll just go work for somebody else and, work something more like a reasonable schedule and then get a regular paycheck. So it's kind of that sense of getting to the end of their rope and just feeling tired and like they're done. And really that's what I see when I say burnout. So how I deal with it, one small part of it is teaching them some practical tools and techniques to help them better manage their time, better manage themselves, organize their business a little bit better. Things, almost as simple as establishing priorities for what needs to get done in any given day or any given week. Things like blocking out time on their calendars to actually focus on work that is important that needs to get done. This is really practical tools like that. But the bigger part of helping them get through this burnout really is changing that mindset. Changing the mindset about, what the business is, how it works, what their role in it is. Like I sort of alluded to a few minutes ago when I talked about the business is the product, right? It's getting to that opinion and view of the business. And you really can think of the tools and techniques, they're sort of like painkillers. They can address the symptoms of this burnout pretty quickly, but it's that mindset change that really gets to the root causes and becomes the long-term solution to help these owners really get where they want to be.
Okay. So, I know that you also, you help owners basically, you put themselves in a position where they're working on their business instead of in their business. What are some common problems that when you're working with clients that you come across when owners are in this position where they're, like you said, they're in burnout, they're working in it, not on it?
Right. And that shift to working on the business, right, that's a really important aspect of this mindset change that I've been talking about. Now, in terms of the things that I see when people come to me and good indicators that they're trapped working in the business, and there's a bunch of them. And usually any one person's got a whole list of them going on. But some of the most common ones are, really it's an owner who's working long hours and not really getting anywhere. It's an owner who's feeling frustrated and burnt out and in some cases like downright angry at the world because they're not getting where they want to be. Those, are usually pretty easy to see in a conversation. And I've been surprised at how some of that anger comes out even when I first start talking to people. The other things that we tend to see a lot of are, roller coaster sales, that whole feast or famine cycle, right? Where either they've got so much work that they can't get it done and they're scrambling, or they've got no work and now they're like racing around desperately trying to find anybody to pay them for anything, which invariably leads to the whole cycle of not having enough money to cover the bills at the end of the month because they don't have any business at the moment. So there's huge amounts of stress that get built up because of that. Or, being totally overwhelmed with all this work to get and the stress of trying to hit the deadlines. So it's like they get hit with these stressors all the time at one extreme or the other. And that's just not healthy and that's not sustainable over the long run. Another thing that I tend to see a lot is poor financial performance. The business is either losing money or it's, barely breaking even. And in almost all cases, right, the owner's either not taking any money at all or taking just barely enough to scrape by, which is never why they started the business. We also see things like spotty delivery, quality issues with their product or service, or consistency issues with how it gets done. We see employees that are disengaged. Right? They're basically showing up for a paycheck, and their goal essentially is to do as little as possible in exchange for that check and go home as quickly as they can. And another big thing that I see with these businesses is they're trying to succeed with a lot of really generic Me Too marketing. Right? There's no real differentiation between them and their competitors. And that makes it just that much harder to get sales.
That makes sense. Okay, I want to actually back up a second about the mindset situation. First of all, how do you help them with their mindset?
It's really just kind of a long, slow process, and we start by sort of introducing the idea that there's another way to look at this, and then just start working on some things that move them in that direction of seeing it that way. In a lot of cases, it's learned by doing. Right? So, there's great truth to the idea that clarity comes with action. So we can talk about how this mindset has to change and what the end point that they really need to get to is. But, sometimes that can be kind of hazy or, sound great in theory, but they aren't clear at first how exactly that's going to work. So then we just start doing the work to get there. And, with each step they take, right, it becomes a little bit more clear. It's kind of like, when you're walking around someplace, right, and you see this giant hill in front of you, and that's all you see, right? You get to the top of the hill, and suddenly there's that huge valley on the other side that you couldn't see before. So it's kind of like slowly moving them in that direction, which broadens their horizon and changes their perspective. And over time, right, that mindset shift starts to take root.
Okay, so it's a process. That's not something that happens overnight.
No, this is not like instant gratification by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay. So how do you help them gain traction to achieve their goals instead of consistently playing, catch up?
It starts with them, right? We start on the work of changing that perspective, right, about what the business is and how it works, and getting to that working on the business. And here's why we have to work so hard on that, because most people that start a business, when they started it because they were good at doing something, right? The plumber starts a plumbing company, the lawyer starts a law firm, and so on, right? So they work hard on the work and they get some results. So then they work harder on the work and they get some more results. But as they keep doing that, what they find, right, eventually they're not physically capable of doing any more work because either they just don't have the energy or there just aren't enough hours in the day. So now they're stuck. And they're stuck at a point where it's usually way below where they want to be in terms of earning. And it's a point way above where they want to be in terms of the amount of effort they're expending to make what they're making. So really what they start to discover by taking that approach is that they've really kind of built a prison for themselves, because now they're trapped in the business. Right? The second they stop working, the business stops. So it's kind of like they find themselves running as fast as they can on a treadmill, right? And the second they stop running, they're just going to go shooting off the back of it. And, they're desperately trying for that not to happen. And that just leaves them in a kind of a dead end spot. So the shift that we work on the mindset is, like I mentioned before, right, to start looking at the business itself as the product, right? Start to think of the business not as this group of people that does whatever it is the business does, right? But to look at the business as a system that creates some sort of a result for its customers. And as the owner, right, they're the designer of that system. And their real job is to build the system so that the system can do the work, as opposed to their real job being rolling up their sleeves and doing the work.
Mm-hmm. No, it totally does. So, I mean, do you start with the owners and then you help with the team, or do you just help the owners and tell them what to do with their employees?
Well, it almost always starts with the owners. The only real exceptions to that would be a scenario where it's some sort of like a nonprofit or a civic organization where I'd be sort of working with the executive director, the person who's ultimately in charge of making it all work, even though they don't quote unquote own it. Occasionally, there might be a business with an absentee owner with a general manager who's basically there to make everything work if the owner doesn't want to be involved. But those are exceptions. It's almost always working with the owner at first, and then depending on the situation and the size of the company, we might start bringing in some of their key people also to work on it, and then bring it down through the organization, or just the owner and have them continue.
All right. So if you had maybe one or two little nuggets of advice for an owner that's in that burnout, working on, in their business, that type of position, what would it be?
Well, first, and they need to recognize that it's made it to the point where the old approach has reached its limits. That they've kind of hit the place where, what got them here isn't going to get them there. And it's really time to change their approach. And that can be a really hard thing for someone to recognize, because that approach of working in the business and rolling up their sleeves and just working harder, and up to that point, it's worked. Right? It's gotten them from nothing to wherever they're at. So it has brought in money, it has brought in clients, but it's hit its limit. And they need to be able to recognize when they get there, and they need to recognize that they have to change their approach if they want to continue to grow or to continue down the path to wherever it is they want to go with this business. And the second thing is they need to know that there is a way to get where they want to be, but only if they're willing to change how they think and how they work. A lot of the business owners that I talk to very much need the things that I can help them do. But a much smaller set of those people actually recognize that they need it, and recognize and are willing to make a change to make that happen. So really it's understanding that the current model has gotten them as far as it's going to take them, and being willing to do something different to continue. And those are the two big things that the owners in the spot need to recognize.
Okay, so you teach a 5-part process, and basically to help change how owners think and operate their business. Can you walk me through those 5 parts?
Sure. So we start really with this mindset change that we've been talking about up until now. And we always start there, because that becomes the foundation for being able to do all the other work. Now, when I talk about the mindset change, right, it's changing from what Michael Gerber in the E-Myth called the technician to the entrepreneur. Now, the technician, right, it's that person that works in the business, right? They're doing the work, right? They're showing up every day, they're doing it, and they're very much in the present. And this is where most owners are stuck when I start working with them. What we want to do is turn them into the entrepreneur, and that's the person who works on the business, right? They're planning the work, they're creating that system we talked about a few minutes ago, and they're mostly living in the future. But in reality, every business owner needs to sort of be both of those people. But what we're trying to do is take them from being almost all technician and no entrepreneur to eventually being almost all entrepreneur and no technician. And when we work through that and they start to adopt that perspective, right, they're coming out of that part with a whole new perspective on what the business is and what it can become. And then the next 4 parts are really all about the different elements, in the company, and the order and amount of attention we pay to each really is very individual depending on the client. But the first one is really all about the organization. It's about defining what kind of an organization you need to accomplish the result you're trying to accomplish. And that's all about knowing what jobs need to be done and how they need to relate to each other and what each is supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it. Because by doing that, what you end up with is some certainty that everything is in place and there's no confusion about who needs to do what, and nothing slipping through the cracks. And it makes it much easier to actually find people who are a good fit for each of those sets of roles. And when you find people who are a good fit for those roles, now you've got people that are more engaged, more successful, and more willing to be accountable to achieve, which is what most employees really want anyway. Now, the third part is really all about the process. It's about improving the quality and consistency of the service delivery for their customers. And what this is really the secret sauce of how we do it here. It's where the owner is deliberately designing, let's call it the operating instructions for every piece of business. And what that means is documenting and standardizing how things get done. And by doing that, one, they're creating something that they know works that can be replicated. They're creating consistency across employees and across experiences, and they're kind of baking in the culture of the business. because they're specifying exactly how these things are supposed to get done. They can make sure that the process, right, becomes a living version of what the owner's vision for the business is and what their values about doing business are and so on. And it also makes it a lot easier to hire and train employees when there's a clear way to do things. Now, the fourth part is all about getting better at sales and marketing. Now, as I said, I need more sales. That's probably the second most common thing I hear after I can't find any good help. So this is where we really work on getting clear about the target market, the offer, and how the business is really different from the competition. Because way too often, I work with people who haven't found a well-defined market or communicated any real point of difference, and that traps them in this cycle of basically promising to do the work $1 cheaper, a day faster, and make one less mistake than their competitors. And it becomes a race to the bottom. So what we work on is getting very clear about what is this niche market that they address and how can they produce an offer, for their product or service that really meets the need that this market has. And how can they very clearly define and communicate the real points of difference, which effectively then make them a market of one to their target. And they're no longer competing on price and those other sort of commodity type things. And then the last piece is we teach them how to manage by measurement. Because, there's a lot of truth to that idea, right, is what gets measured gets done, right? And what gets measured gets improved. So we start to develop this culture of management by numbers. So, we help them define sort of key performance indicators, create dashboards that can track them so they know if they're going in the right direction. And it also helps them implement a process to diagnose and take action on whatever's underperforming. So those are the 5 big parts that we work on.
Okay, so why do you think this process is so successful when you're working with your clients?
Because it's very methodical. So there's always a sense that they know where they are in the process and where they're going. And it's broken down into small, achievable chunks. Because breaking it down sets up a pattern of success, and that builds forward momentum. The brain likes to win. Right? So every victory, no matter how small, it triggers this dopamine rush, and it makes the owner feel good. Right? So it's like playing a video game, right? They're the ultimate thing of small victories that keep you moving forward. So by breaking it all down into those small wins, right, the owner stays engaged and he keeps wanting to move forward to the next thing. Now contrast that with, doing these big, long, complicated things where there's no end in sight. That just creates a downward spiral of frustration, makes people want to quit. So that methodical progression through the little steps, it's possible because everything has been thought through and organized into templates and worksheets. So that way the client's not starting on a blank page, right? They have the step-by-step guide to accomplish each step. Now, that's not to say that everyone gets to the same endpoint. These materials are all set up to facilitate getting to the client's unique business, not replicating the same business with every client.
How important is accountability when you're working with business owners, and how do you help them stay on track?
Well, really, accountability, and that's everything. Because without exception, every long-term client I've had says they started the business, or they started to get a business education and some tangible result. Now, they stay for the accountability. Now, one of the central problems most small business owners face is that they're overwhelmed with far more work than any one person can ever hope to accomplish. So the natural result of that is they prioritize the urgent. Right? There's a client who's calling asking, where's my stuff? They go to the top of the list. Something that has a deadline goes to the top of the list. Now, the important work of actually building the business that we've been talking about up until now, that sinks to the bottom because no one's calling asking where that new marketing plan is, and no one's calling and asking where that new process for delivering your service is. Right? But as a coach, I become the person who's calling and asking where those things are. So it sort of makes it urgent for them. And the way I do that really is pretty simple. And we agree that they're going to do something by a certain date. And then I consistently ask them if they did it. And if they didn't, I ask them why not. And that just goes around and around. And what it does over time is it gets them to start prioritizing the urgent, or prioritizing the important over the urgent. Or maybe in some cases they get it done just so they don't have to answer my why not question. But either way, right, they're making progress to getting to things that they say matter.
Okay. So what are some common misconceptions that business owners have when they're like thinking of hiring a coach?
Well, really there's three big ones. One is that sometimes they think that the coach is going to do the work for them, like a consultant or a service provider, and that's just not the case. I half jokingly tell people that my business coaching is equal parts business school instructor, mentor, and therapist. The work I do with people really is all about giving them the skills and the mindset that they need to get where they want to go, not doing it for them. The second big one, right, is that just hiring the coach is somehow going to magically solve all their problems. And that's the first step. But unless they do the work, nothing's going to change. And it's hard work. And sometimes a lot of clients will underestimate how hard it is when they start. And so what I'm doing very often is really pushing clients to think and talk about a lot of things that they've never really explored before. And then finally, the other one is that they somehow won't have to work on themselves. And that it's all about fixing their marketing or fixing their process or getting better employees. What many don't get at first, right, is the way that they show up in the business has a huge impact on its performance. So there's that very strong element of them working on themselves that a lot of people either underestimate or don't realize.
So how do you know you're the right coach for the client and that the client's someone that will actually be able to soar and achieve their goals by using you as a coach?
Well, all of my engagements start with, I call it a discovery call. So during that call, the owner and I are talking for at least an hour, often longer than that, about what's going on in their business, what their goals are, what's getting in the way of achieving them, and sort of any other things that come up during that conversation. And through the course of that, both of us can usually get a good feel for whether it's a good fit. That helps quite a bit. Sometimes, though, right, this lack of fit starts to show up after we get into the work. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, then we just kind of call it and go our separate ways. Right? I don't require any kind of long-term contracts for that exact reason, right, to provide a way out if it's not working. And what I found, right, is people who usually leave within the first couple of months. Sometimes it's this lack of chemistry or lack of fit, but more often it's really the owners realizing that they're not in a place yet where they're ready and able to do the work they need to do.
Okay. So how long do you work with your clients?
Well, to really see results when I'm working with someone one-on-one, we need to be working together for, a good 6 months. Now, that said, and I have clients who've been with me for years. I also do some specific programs that are designed to get a result in a shorter period, like a couple of day workshop, or, I've got a group program that runs over 12 weeks. But the one-on-one stuff, it should be thought of as a long-term commitment and not entered into unless they're willing to commit to that.
Okay, so it kind of depends on what the needs are, and each client's going to be different.
Yeah, exactly.
I have one more question. This is probably the most important one. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you for your services, how would they go about doing that?
Well, they can get to me through my website, which is ericksoncoach.com, or they can email me at ed@ericksoncoach.com, or they can call me at 773-672-7418. And all that contact info is also on the website.
Nice. Well, first of all, I really want to say I appreciate your time today. I love how you break things down, make it simple, and you take it from a more methodical aspect instead of, you have to do this, or that, which is different the way most people approach it. And I really appreciate your time today. I would love to have you back on the show soon.
Well, thanks, Alicia.
Nope, this has been great. So, hi guys, this is Alicia DeBrell from Insight Media. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.